Welcome from home. Welcome to class. So happy to have you. My name is Amanda. So this is a 60-minute yin class. I planned the class purposely without props, but you are welcome to bring all the props to the table, to the mat, so to speak. So we are going to just get at it right away and start on our backs. So the position that we're going to start in this evening is Supta Baddha Konasana. So take your sweet time getting yourself all the way on your back. And then let your soles of your feet come together and your knees open wide. So some options for props, if you have them, would be to take some blocks, or if you have rolled up towels, you can take those underneath your knees or your thighs, just so that you can offer yourself a little bit of support to lean into. And then find a little bit of drawing of the shoulder blades together so that you can feel just your chest and your heart open a little bit here. Your arms can simply rest at your sides, maybe palms up to the sky. If it feels good to you, you can bring one hand to your heart and one hand to your belly if you want to immediately feel a sense of connecting to yourself. And then if it feels safe in your body to close your eyes, I invite you to close your eyes here. If you prefer to keep your eyes open, then just find a place for your gaze to settle. And then allow yourself to fully arrive for your practice. Perhaps you bring your attention to your breath. And for these first few moments of practice, simply notice and become aware of your breath. Become familiar with the rise and fall of your inhale and your exhale. Notice the quality of your breath, whether it feels easy or whether it feels a little strained or frenetic or shallow. Without trying to change anything, just observe the breath moving in and out, trusting that with a little time, with a little attention, with a little intention, you'll start to find a nice rhythm. And how, as we bring our attention to the breath, it has a tendency to naturally deepen. So a few words that I'd like to offer as we cultivate this stillness within our bodies is two ideas: discipline and dedication. So oftentimes we are dedicated to doing. We are disciplined with our to-do lists. What if we showed up to this particular class, this particular time, disciplined and dedicated to our rest and to our self-care, just as much as we are to the other parts of our lives where we're trying to get it done and the busyness of our life, just going from one thing to the next to the next. So can you bring this sense of willingness to commit yourself to cultivating peace, rest, calm, and stillness in your body in a way that we tackle our doing in our lives? What does it look like to be dedicated to our rest? To be disciplined to stay in the sometimes uncomfortable space of being still and not doing. So just allow yourself this time to be disciplined and dedicated to you. Trusting that your willingness to do this impacts the world in a positive way if we all chose to take this time. And we can't make anybody else do anything, but we have full agency over how this time is spent and how you show up with this sense of discipline to stay, to breathe, to lean in. Just a few more moments, allowing yourself to simply breathe, simply be. Having a sense of discipline to not rush, to do less. Right, and then from here, start to bring a little bit of movement into your body. So maybe it's wiggling your fingers a little bit, maybe it's rocking your head from side to side. And just slowly and mindfully feeling your way into your body. And then take your hands to your knees or your thighs and gently close your knees together, bringing the soles of your feet to the mat, knees up to the sky. And just let your body feel the impact of that first posture. Disciplined to not rush to the next thing, but just allow yourself to feel the impressions in your body. Good, and then from here, as you're ready, you're gonna reach your arms all the way up and overhead. And then let your legs go long, so come into a full body stretch. And just breathe into the entire length of your body. Maybe you flex and extend your spine a little bit. Maybe you point and flex your toes. Maybe you roll the wrists and ankles here. Dedicated to taking your time. And then when your next exhale comes, you're just going to hug both knees in towards your chest. You might take your hands to your shins or wrap your hands around your knees. You might even draw your forehead in towards your knees and just find a gentle sway from side to side. If lifting your head off the mat just does not feel right to you, then let your head come back to the ground. And then from here, you're going to keep your right leg drawn in, extend your left leg long. So let your left leg just rest on your mat. Hug your right thigh in towards your belly. And then just roll the right ankle one way and the other. Just finding whatever feels good to you. Good, and then from here, you're going to take your right arm out to the right, like perpendicular to your body. And then left hand is just going to gently guide your right knee across your body, coming into a spinal twist. So you'll shift a little bit onto that left hip. So some options for support here would be to put a blanket or a bolster or a yoga block underneath your right knee. And then let your shoulders soften. You can keep your left hand resting on the outside of your right knee or thigh, or you can let your left arm go out to a T nice and wide. Make a good conscious choice if you keep your gaze up at the ceiling, or maybe you turn your head to the right and come into a little bit more of a twist. And then as you turn your head to the right, also pay attention to how you can find a little stretch and a little opening along the left side of your neck. And then consider this idea of, with each exhale, just giving your weight away to the ground a little bit more. And then notice as you find stillness, what the mind starts to do, if it starts to wander out of your space or out of this moment. Can you have that discipline and dedication to come back to this moment and this breath? Right, fully committing to this time just for you. You've taken the time to show up, so show up fully. All right, if your gaze is off to the right, you're going to bring your gaze up, back to the sky, back to the ceiling. And then just start to reach your arms up overhead. You're going to start to roll onto your belly. So your right hand is going to come down. Your left arm will be kind of along. You might have to scoot yourself over on your mat. Your right knee is going to stay bent. Move nice and slowly. So right knee is going to come out to the right. So it's at like a little frog position. And then you're going to goal post your arms, bring your left cheek to the mat, and let yourself land here. So left cheek to the mat. I'm going to turn towards the camera so you can see me and hear me. But left cheek on the mat, and then let your body just soften into the ground. So again, some supporting props that might come in handy here would be a blanket underneath your right knee. So right knee drawn up towards your right elbow. Arms are cactus shaped. And then allow this gentle opening in your right hip. Notice how your breath feels different in your body when you are on your belly versus on your back. Tune into the sensations where you might be feeling this pose the most. Just a couple more beautiful breaths. All right, and then from here, you're going to extend your left arm all the way out to the left. So it's perpendicular to your body, maybe 90 degrees, or it can be a little less than 90. Your right hand is going to come right underneath your right shoulder. And then you're just going to push into the ground to roll onto your left hip here. Right foot is going to come behind your left leg, so keep that right knee bent. Ball onto the right foot will come to the ground. Be really mindful of your left shoulder here. So if it's too intense, you can use your right hand to roll a little bit more towards your belly. If you want a little bit more, you can roll back towards the long left side of your mat here. And then breathe into the inside of your left shoulder. You can stay right where you are, or maybe you reach your right arm up to the sky. If you want, you can wrap your right arm behind your low back to come into a little half bind. But really listen to the sensations in your body. If that is causing any pain or strain, then that is your cue to back off. If it's just a little uncomfortable in a way that feels like you're meeting yourself at your edge, then consider staying there. And in that consideration, you might decide to change it, but maybe that pause and just allowing, do I need to make a change, or can I stay and breathe right where I am? Just another 3, maybe 4 breaths. And then if you have that half bind, you're going to bring your right hand back to your mat. Roll all the way back to your belly, and then you're going to come into a Sphinx pose. So you'll let your elbows come right underneath your shoulders. Spread your fingers wide, and then stay nice and heavy in the pelvis. Legs are long. And then notice if you're collapsing in your chest, grow out of that space. Draw your navel in towards your spine. So you might stay here in stillness, or you might drop your chin down towards your chest and stretch through the back of your neck. If you want to explore a little more neck mobility, you could roll your chin over towards your right shoulder. Feel a little stretch out of the left side of your neck. You might stay there for a few breaths. And then maybe bring it back to center. Again, whenever you're ready, I'm just giving some options here. Then maybe look a little bit over towards the left. So there's not a wrong way to do this. It's your time and your space to explore. Just creating a little bit of space. Another option will be here for just a little bit longer, but if you'd like to find a little support, if you don't want to hold your head up and it feels too stressful to let your head drop down, you can support your head with a couple of blocks or one block or a bolster or something like that. And perhaps you keep coming back to this idea of dedicating yourself to the stillness, this self-care. Maybe 3 more breaths here. All right. And then when you're ready, you're going to lift your elbows up just a little bit, slide your right arm underneath your left, and you're just going to start to roll onto your right hip. Slide your left leg up, and then you're going to open back up into your twist. So we just did a little circle on our mat. Your right hand can come to the outer left thigh, and then your left arm is out to the side. Adjust your shoulders as you need, adjust your body as you need. Maybe you bring your gaze over to the left. If it feels good to bring the right arm out to the right so your arms are in that T shape, feel free to do so. Allowing yourself to simply be here fully. And just taking note of the difference in twisting from right to left. Every time your mind starts to wander, disciplined to come back to this space. In a way that's really loving. All right, maybe 3 more breaths. All right, and then on an exhale, you're going to bring your left arm all the way over back to meet the right. We're going to come back to our bellies. The left knee is going to stay at that little frog shape, that little half crocodile shape, and then we'll close your arms. Your right cheek is going to come onto the mat. Just completing the other side, opening up the left hip. If you want to take a blanket underneath your left knee. And I didn't say it on the other side, but if it's too much to have your head turned to the left, you could certainly also stack your palms on top of one another with your forehead resting on your palms, the back of your hands. It definitely takes dedication to be willing to be still. For many of us, it's so much easier to keep moving, right? To keep all the balls juggling in the air. It takes time and attention and intention, as I said earlier, to really commit to slowing down. All right, then from here, you're going to take your right arm straight out for a little bit less than that 90 degrees. Your left hand comes underneath your shoulder so it can act as a support. Push your left hand into the ground. Start to roll over onto your right hip. Your head can stay hovering, of course, but I invite you to let it drop down. And then lastly, your left arm, I guess not your left foot rather, left foot can come behind your right leg to act as this little kickstand, this little support. Your left hand can stay where it is, or you can reach it up to the sky. Or if it feels good, you can internally rotate your shoulder and take your hand behind your low back to open up the right inside of the right shoulder, or left shoulder rather. Right, left. Really paying attention to the sensations in your body. So if the feeling gets too intense, then give yourself that permission to soften out of it a little bit. You don't have to commit. If you took something too far, the practice is about really honoring where your body is. All right, and then your left hand is going to come back to the mat if it's not there. Start to slowly make your way back onto your belly. And then both hands underneath your shoulders and lift your chest. We're going to come back to a Sphinx pose just for a couple of breaths. If you want a little bit more intensity in this back bend, you might consider bending your knees and bringing your heels towards your sit bones. But really pay attention to your low back. Sometimes that can be way too intense. So draw your navel in to support your low back. Really be honest with yourself about what feels like an edge and what feels like pushing yourself beyond your edge. And then pressing actively elbows and forearms into the ground. Just for a few more breaths. And then slowly start to lower your feet down if you've lifted your legs up. You're going to lift your right elbow up a little bit so you can thread your left arm underneath. And then we're just going to roll all the way back onto our backs. Once you get onto your back, you're going to come into a full body stretch. And just notice the difference between this full body stretch and our first one of practice. And then gather your knees in once again. And then just take the backs of your thighs and you're slowly going to lower your feet down towards the ground. Tuck your chin towards your chest. And we're just going to slowly ease our way up. If you prefer to roll onto one side and gently help yourself up that way, you can certainly do that. And then once you're here, we're going to cross the ankles and then come forward into tabletop. So from your tabletop, If you'd like to place a blanket underneath your knees just to add a little extra love and padding for your knees, you can do that. And then you're going to feel your hand to earth connection. So really feel your palm, your fingers pressing into the ground, and then a little lift through the inside of your palm. Shoulders are right over your wrists, hips are right over your knees. And then feel your belly draw in just to support the low back. So you have a little bit of this hollowing out feeling in the front side of your body. And then we're just going to find a little bit of movement here through cat and cow. So inhale, drop your belly low, crown and tail reach to the sky. Gazing forward and up. Exhale, round through the back side of your body, tuck your chin to your chest. Inhale, open up the front side of your body, come into extension, and then exhale, round through your spine, come into flexion. Good, so a few more moments, just like that, moving on your own. You might even choose to close your eyes so you can feel the sensations a little more fully in your body. Dedicated and disciplined to not rush one little thing. If you want to find some other movements here, by all means, feel free. We're going to be here for 2, maybe 3 more cycles of breath. Beautiful. All right, from here, we're going to come into a neutral spine. So just how we started. Extend your right foot back. So ball of the foot is going to stay grounded here, and you might just press your foot into the mat so you can feel a little stretch through the back of your right calf. So you'll feel your hands press a little more firmly, really strong in your arms. It doesn't have to be like this crazy amount of press. It's just a little stretch in the back of your leg. And then you're going to take your right foot, lift it off of your mat, send it off the left edge of your mat. So then strong in your arms here, strong and straight, peek over your left shoulder and just feel a little stretch along the right hip. You'll get a little bit more of a stretch in the hip and right side body if you lean a little bit more to the right. So again, you get to decide how much you want to feel. Good, and then keep your body just as it is. Bring your gaze forward. And you're just going to tuck your right knee behind your left. So set your right knee down, and then your feet are just going to come out to the side. So opposite sides for your feet. And just slowly start to walk your hands back. So you're going to come onto your seat. So some options here to support you. If this is too much to have your knees stacked over each other, you could bring just your left shin forward. So coming into Gomukhasana, cow face pose, your feet are out to the sides, and then another way to support yourself here would be to prop yourself up on like a bolster or a blanket or a block. One last option that I'll give you is you could straighten your right leg here and just stack the knees in that way. All right, so from here, we're going to just tend our fingers out to the sides. Lift a little bit through your chest. And then left fingers are going to walk a little bit out to the left. So your palm can come down, bend into your left elbow, and you're just going to reach your right arm overhead. So just a side body stretch here. Turn this way so you can see a little bit more. And then if you notice your right shoulder and chest is starting to come down, see if you can open that up so you can really get into the side body a little bit more. Stay anchored through your right sitting bone. And then play with where it feels good to have your gaze. So maybe it feels good to have your gaze up, or maybe it feels good to have your gaze down, kind of peeking over your left shoulder. And then we're gonna rotate right chest and right shoulder down, so opposite of what I just said, right? Right hand's going to come down to the ground, so you might feel a little more intensity in the stretching of your right side body and right hip. And then just getting really honest with yourself about if that feels okay, if that's a good edge for you, or if it's too intense, then back off a little bit. And then you're going to cross your left hand over your right, and then the right hand will uncross until you come into center, and we're going to fold over our legs here. So you're just going to walk your hands forward. So it might be a very short journey, right? And then find ways that you can support yourself if you have props here. So block, a couple of blocks, maybe a bolster. You're going to really be targeting mostly the outer left hip. You feel it a little in your right hip as well, just depending on your body. And just lean into that edge where it's not too easy, not too hard, where you're holding your breath. Just this place of a little discomfort. Can you stay with it? Can you breathe with it? Do you have that discipline? And of course, the answer is yes. All right, and then if you need to walk your hands back a little bit so you have a little something to push into, you're going to lift your hips up so you can walk your hands back out. I'll flip myself around here. Back out, and then uncross your legs. You might bump the hips a little bit from side to side. And then we'll move on to the other side. So find that nice strong tabletop. The left leg is going to extend back. And then you'll feel that press of your left foot into the ground. Feel the stretch through the left calf. You'll feel the activation in your arms and in your core as you press back into that, depending on how much you're bringing to the stretch. And then lift your left foot off of the ground. Bring the left foot off the right side of your mat so you can find that side body stretch peeking over your right shoulder. Feel the stretch in the left hip. If you lean a little bit more into your left hand, you might feel a little more stretch in the left hip and the side body and into the low back area. Good, and then your gaze is going to go forward, your body's going to stay the same. And just tuck your left knee behind your right. Let your feet come out to the right and the left so that you can make a little space to walk your hands back and come onto your seat. And then once you kind of get onto your seat, decide if you want to prop yourself up in any kind of a way. It might be just right shin over the left shin. That would be more accessible to you. Otherwise, stacking the knees. That other option is straighten the bottom leg, your left leg. And then just notice how this feels in your body here. Tense your fingers out to the sides, a little bit of opening through the chest. And then we'll lean over to the right, palm comes down, bend into your right elbow, reach your left arm all the way up and over. So grounding through the left sitting bone. And then not overreaching here. I didn't say it on the other side, but you can draw your left shoulder back in its socket. Think about opening left chest and left shoulder. And then you get to decide where your gaze is, whether it's up or down. There's not a better choice. It's just what feels good. What do you want to target in your body? What do you need? And then we're going to rotate left chest and left shoulder down so the left hand can come off to your right. I'm just finding a little more twist, a little more stretch. And then you're going to cross your right hand over your left. Bring your left hand over and then keep the cross going until you are nice and centered with both hands out in front of you. That might be enough, or you might walk your hands a little further. Maybe there is a block or a bolster supporting you. Just acknowledging the difference between your right and your left hip. Maybe you need a little more support on this side. Maybe you need a little less. And just do a little inward scan. Are you holding yourself up in a way that you don't need to? Sometimes we resist this willingness to open, particularly in our hips. Can you bring the breath to the places that feel tight? Can you bring the love, the compassion? All right. 2 more breaths wherever you are. And then slowly start to rise up just enough so that you can support yourself to come forward, lifting your hips, and then untying your legs. You might bump the hips a little bit from side to side. You might find a couple of circles one way and then the other. And then back to your tabletop. You're going to bring your right knee behind your right wrist. We're going to come into another hip opener. Yes, another one. Pigeon pose. So right knee behind your right wrist. So if this is too intense for you, you can make your way onto your back into a figure 4, into the supine version of that. Otherwise, let your left leg go long. You might prop your right hip with a blanket, a bolster, a block, with something. And then you can stay upright for sure, or you can walk your hands forward. Maybe you stop at your forearms. Maybe you let your arms go all the way out and let your head come down to the ground. So the supine version, just in case you're not familiar, you would come onto your back, knees bent, right ankle crosses over the left knee. That could be enough for you, or you might draw your left thigh in towards your belly, take your hands behind your left leg, or maybe in front of your left shin. Committed to your breath, committed to presence. the last few cycles of breath, we open the inside of the shoulders. If you want to take your left arm and thread it underneath your right arm, you can do that. Set your head down. Again, not forcing anything. If that's too intense for you, some days I am able to do that, other days I'm not. So just be really mindful of where your body is in this moment. And just 3, maybe 4 more breaths. All right, and then you're going to bring your right hand back by your face. If you're in the forward fold version of this, unthread your left arm. Sit on your right hip and bring your left leg out in front of you. And if you're on your back, you can roll onto one side or rock and roll up to your seat. So bringing right knee in, your left leg is going to go long. And then stretch your arms up to the sky. Really square yourself off with your left leg and then fold over your left leg. So you can have a little bend into your left knee. You could also support yourself by bringing a block or a bolster to rest your head on. If the right knee is just really up and it's distracting you, you could also put a little block or blanket or a bolster, something underneath to support that. With each breath out, think of surrendering into the pose a little bit more, and that doesn't mean folding more deeply, but it means committing a little bit more to the depth of your practice, that discipline and dedication, and willingness to stay with it. Right, 2 more breaths. And then as you're ready, slowly start to rise up. You're going to bend actually we can just bend the left knee and then extend the right leg back. So just making our way to the other side for pigeon. Now this side might be different. This side might be on your back into that supine version that I demonstrated a few moments ago. So right leg is nice and long. Maybe you're propped up something underneath the left hip. And then decide if you want to stay upright. Maybe you stretch through the right hip flexor a little bit, and then perhaps you fold a little bit more. So allow the sides to definitely be different. My left knee is always a little more fussy than my right knee because of injuries and surgeries. So it's really important to just tend to those places instead of trying to muscle your way through. You might be able to pause and then find a little more space to fold into, or maybe it's a good choice to stay where you are. For the last few breaths, if you'd like the option to thread your right arm underneath your left, right shoulder comes down, right temple comes down. And then your left hand will come back to the ground if you were threading your right arm unthread. Walk your hands back and then sit on your left hip to bring the right leg out in front of you, keeping the left leg bent. Turn this way just for fun. If you're on your back, make your way onto your seat. And then sitting up nice and tall, we're going to reach our arms all the way up and then exhale to fold. And again, each side is different. So it's the same pose, but it's a different pose because it feels totally different from right to left for most of us. I was thinking a lot about discipline today as I had to do some things that I didn't really want to do, as we all often have, right? And the discipline comes when we are willing to do those things, even when we don't want to. So sometimes, particularly in a practice like this, it's, yes, I absolutely want to do it. Other times, it's way harder to slow down. But we know how good it is for our bodies, for our minds, for our spirits, with this willingness to show up anyway, even when we don't feel like doing the work. In fact, it was for my own yoga practice, now that I think about it. And 2 more breaths. Once you hit your second breath, start to rise up. We're going to straighten both legs out long. You might scoop forward on your mat. And then I always like to, especially after those kind of stretches, bump my knees up and down a little bit. You might even make fists with your hands and just kind of massage your thighs, your hips. Good, and then let's just come into one more brief forward fold. You might bend your knees a little or a lot. You might take a bolster underneath your knees, or you could put a bolster on top or a pillow, something like that. We're gonna reach our arms up to the sky, and then just a nice, easy forward fold. And your knees might start bent, and you might just work to slowly, over time, with breath, you might work to straighten them a little bit. If it's a day where you can actually reach your feet or your toes, you might even give yourself a little massage. Why not? You deserve that. Easy, slowly rise up. We're going to come all the way onto our backs for the Promised Land Shavasana. So once you, or before you lay on your back, decide if there's some way that you can best support yourself. So perhaps a bolster underneath your knees, perhaps a blanket for your head to rest on. If you have a sandbag, throw a sandbag on your pelvis, ground a little bit. So lie on back. Again, can you bring a dedication and a discipline to rest, to this final resting position? Right, fully committed. perhaps a few exaggerated breaths in and exhales out your mouth to really set it all down, lay it all out. And then before fully dropping all the way in, just a little scan of your body. Notice all the places that you are connected to the ground. That the ground is rising up to meet and support you. And in all those places, there's that connection, your willingness to feel the support, to rest in that support, held. There's nowhere else to be, there's nothing else to do. Just breathe. Begin to deepen your breath. Bring some movement back into your body, maybe wiggling your fingers and toes, rolling your wrists and your ankles. Movements stretch out into your arms and your legs, maybe your whole body stretches. Eventually, bend your knees, bring your feet to the mat, and roll onto one side. Again, this opportunity to be disciplined, to take your sweet, sweet time. What are we rushing back for? And then nice and slowly begin to rise into your seat. Keeping your eyes closed or a soft gaze. Sit up tall. Gather your hands together at your heart center. My honor to guide you. Thank you for sharing your presence, your practice, your dedication with me, with each other. Wishing you well, wishing you peace. Namaste.